Christy, thank you for all of the time that we spent together talking about this and getting to this moment,
Sure.
and your willingness to share your story that all of us remember that have been here in 25 years ago in Independence. And so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely, thank you. So just share with us a little bit about that day. What kind of, what happened and your reaction to it?
Sure. So it was February 22nd, 2000, and my son Jake was an afternoon kindergartner. So that morning I had gone to the mall and gotten him a pretzel. He had so many food allergies, so I knew that the Auntie Anne's pretzel would be good. I got him the pretzel, I got to school, picked him up, and he was eating his pretzel, and he said that he was thirsty. So his dad just lived right around the corner in Glendale Gardens. We were about 10 minutes early. So we stopped at that Mr. Good Sense on the corner of 291 and Hidden Valley, I think, around about there. And I asked him if he wanted to go into the store with me. He said no, he just wanted a Sprite, that he was gonna play his Game Boy. So he had the seatbelt behind him. And I didn't know that obviously at the time, but he had the seatbelt behind him and just the lap band on. I got out of my car and I walked, there's like 3 steps, and I went into the store. I hadn't said anything. I was in there probably 20 seconds. And there was a guy in there and he said, "Man, someone's getting in your car." But when I pulled up, I didn't notice anyone. And so I ran out to my car. The back door was open and the guy in the car was telling me to get him out. And so I was trying to get him out. And as I was trying to get him out in the back seat, the guy that was helping me was in the front seat trying to get the guy taking my car out. So we were both kind of in each other's way with both doors open. So as the doors were open, he was backing out. And as he backed out, I had my son in my arms. And as he backed out, he just gunned it and ripping my son out of my arms, causing the door to close and having him trapped outside of the car. And then he drove away.
Tell me a little bit about your experiences since then. How did you ultimately arrive at grace? But there was a lot of steps along the way. How did you do that? Tell us about some of those steps.
Well, at first, I didn't do anything. I was, just kind of lost. I don't really even recall a couple of years that, I was obviously moving through my life, but there were things that were coming up, years later that were just like coming to the surface that I didn't even remember. But I went back to work. I tried to get as normal as I could get. And I ended up really not doing a lot. I just pushed a lot down and went on with my life.
And then, so obviously it was difficult to navigate those emotions and those challenges. What brought you out of that sense of darkness?
So I would say probably when I had my daughter, who's right over there, I just realized that I couldn't be the mom that I wanted to be if I was stuck in that, whatever I was stuck in. I don't really even know how to describe it, but I thought to be the best mom that I could be, I needed to just get myself together. And I didn't really do anything to get myself together. I thought that just going to work and trying to be happy, putting on a brave face, would be what I did, and that's what I tried to do. But in the interim of that, there was a lot of judgment. I didn't even realize, I'll go back a little bit, I didn't even realize that it was a national thing. I had no idea. This was probably a week after. I thought this was something local, but again, I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. So I started getting mail, lots of hate mail, and I didn't, I couldn't even fathom, like, I don't even understand what's happening. So I guess my thought was, well, I have some culpability in this. And that's when I kind of spiraled a little bit, because I realized if all of these people think that I have culpability in this, then I probably do have culpability in this. So I started treating myself not very good, just not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I had my daughter, that's kind of when I turned around a little bit, just taking better care of myself and realizing that I needed to, at some point, get some therapy.
Okay. And so tell us about that process. How did you?
I was doing things that was very out of my character.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know why I was doing things. I was spending so much money that I didn't have. I was just doing a lot of things that was just trying to fill a void.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that this wasn't in my character. And so where I worked, this girl told me about this PTSD therapist that used to be a police officer and then has since turned to do therapy for first responders. So I started meeting with him, and I just came out of, I did a lot of work on myself. It was probably the hardest thing that I did, but in that work I realized that people are cruel, very, very cruel, and if you can have a tragedy happen to you, not only did my son die, I watched him die driving up the parking lot. And so when people a couple of weeks later can send hate mail and say that you're culpable, that it's your fault, that had you not left him in the car, this wouldn't have happened, had you not done this, had you not done that. And I thought to myself, like, what kind of person, like, do you not think my punishment is enough? Do you think that adding that on is making it better? Or what's going on with you that you feel that you need to say that to me?
Mm-hmm.
So starting therapy made me realize that that's not my problem, what people think about me. I know what I did. I know the kind of mom I was. I know the kind of person that I am. And I wasn't going to let people discount that anymore.
Right.
So that was in I didn't get therapy until 2017. 17 years it took me.
So what was the trigger that made you kind of say, hey, I wanted to get counseling and get working on that? What was, was there one moment, or was it just a process?
I was going through a lot personally, but again, my daughter, I wanted to be as healthy for her as I could be and be a good example of just normalcy, not having a mom I'm very triggered by stuff still, but the only thing that triggers me is when she's not home. when she's out, it's like kid stuff triggers me. When a kid dies. I had a 19-year-old at work who died a couple of years ago, and for 3 days I was just out of it. Those are the only things that trigger me, though, is when it has anything to do with kids or my kid.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Because you shared the story with me about the night that she went, I think, to prom.
To prom, yeah. The night that she went to prom. And I had Life 360, which I've since had to delete because it was too much. It was my hobby, following her on Life 360.
And there are people out there that are agreeing with you right now that they've deleted it too. So.
Yeah, it's too much.
Right.
And so it was prom night, and I happened to look at Life 360, and the car was going like 76, and I called her and I said, "Who's driving?" And because I knew that it wasn't her. And I told her, and I don't know if you remember this, but I told her, I said, "Whoever's driving, tell them to slow down or I will kill them with my bare hands." I mean, I was distraught. But that kind of stuff, and I wasn't kidding.
Right.
I was not, I was serious.
Right.
I even stopped at Dairy Queen because I thought I'm going to eat some ice cream and calm down. And I'm outside of my car at Dairy Queen, and I'm having a full-blown, breathing panic attack, and I'm crying, and no one is around. I'm just, because I don't know how to handle, because I'm not in control.
Sure.
And I wasn't in control the day that my son died. So anytime that something like that happens, those are the things that trigger me, when I don't have control of what's going on, but mainly with her,
Right. And
which she appreciates.
there's parental guidance and there's parental guidance.
Yes.
And so we talked too during our conversations preparing for this about the expectations people had of you and how that changed your view of the world and people. Give me a little bit on that.
So I didn't realize the expectations of me until it was, your family members can be the most judging people, and out of love, I'm guessing. But there were times that I would do something. For example, I bought a new car. I had to have a car,
Sure.
And my mom was distraught. She was, "Why are you buying a new car? You can't drive that." We were getting ready to have there was something going on regarding Jake's Law. I didn't have anything to do with Jake's Law, but there was something that they were having, and they wanted me to come. I didn't end up going, but my mom said, you can't drive that car. What will people think if you're driving a nice car?" Thinking to myself, well, so my son's died, so I have to live, like, what's the expectation? That's what started me thinking, so I'm not allowed to smile, because if I smile, I didn't love my son enough. If I laugh, if I seem to be happy out in public, if I'm going to dinner and people recognize me, because at first they recognized me a lot, because my name was in the news. So if people recognize me, then how could I be enjoying dinner? I need to be at home, and I need to be just sitting in my house and being upset and being sad, because that's what makes people happy. That was my thought. And so that's what I did for a lot of years. I didn't do anything. I was very uncomfortable going to outings that were about my son, going to his school. They had a butterfly garden that they built for him. Anything like that was very uncomfortable for me, because I felt like everybody that was there was looking at me and thinking, well, had you not done what you did, we wouldn't be here. That was a lot of my life for a long time.
And so what got you past that? How do you live daily getting past that moment?
So I feel like people care too much about what other people think about them. And I just decided that if I was going to be happy in my life, that I needed to take control of my life. And the only way that I could do that was therapy, obviously. Doing a lot of stuff in therapy. Making amends with myself. It was really just a lot of pushing people away, not pushing them away, but tuning them out. I started practicing kindness. I started practicing positivity. There was nothing that anybody could say that was going to get to me. And the more positive I talked to myself, and the more times I talked to myself about, I'm a good person. I know who I am. I deserve to be happy. My son wouldn't want me laying in this bed. I know people that have lost people that, never are the same again. I'm not the same.
Sure.
I'm certainly not the same, but I'm better. I'm a better person than what I was then, because of what happened. I've just changed everything about myself.
And you talked about in therapy going and seeing your son's father, and I thought that was pretty poignant. Just share that.
Sure. So I was, and his mother's here today, Jake's grandma. So after Jake died, my ex-husband and I were separated. And after he died, I cared about myself. And I mean that in no disrespect to him, but I couldn't think about what he was going through. I could just think about what I was going through. He lived in his house and I lived in mine. And we never really spoke of it, even though I had a horrible guilt because Jake was on my watch. And so I tried to put myself in Greg's shoes to think, what if he would have been on Greg's watch? How would I be feeling right now? So I was talking to my therapist about that, and he's like, well, so what does Greg think about all this? I don't know. He was like, well, you've never spoken to him about this? I said, I've not uttered a word, which was weird. It didn't seem weird through that 17 years, but because we were separated. But when I said it out loud, I realized that I cannot believe that I haven't even spoken to this man about what happened that day. And I felt like he deserved a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent him a text, and he didn't respond for a few days. I think he probably was, well, what does she want? Because it was a long text
Sure.
about what my therapist had recommended. And he agreed to meet with me. And this is the ironic thing, is that when Greg and I married, he works at Mount Olivet Cemetery, which is where our son is buried. And so a lot of people don't know that, but he goes to work every day at the cemetery where our son is buried. So he was at work, and he said, why don't you come to the cemetery and we can talk there. So he has 2 children since, and he didn't want to upset his family, and I didn't want to upset my family, so we thought we would just be at a neutral, because we didn't know what
Sure.
anybody would think. So we went to the cemetery, and I hadn't been there for a couple years. It's not the most peaceful place for me. I know a lot of people like cemeteries, but it's beautiful. He has built a whole shrine all around the St. Teresa's, where all the kids are buried. And so we sat there and we just had a conversation. It was October. It was cold. We were outside, and we probably spoke for about 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I laid it all out. I let him say what he needed to say to me, and he said a lot.
And what was his reaction?
I think he felt a huge weight lifted off of his shoulders, because I think there were things that he wanted to say to me that he didn't know how to say to me, and I probably at the time previous to that wouldn't have known how to receive it, because I was very defensive out of my own guilt for what I would call culpability and the belief on what I was responsible for.
And so you got to somewhat of a sense of peace together.
Yes.
On that day.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
Tell us a little about your spiritual journey through this process, because at first it had to be incredibly difficult.
Well, so at first I had no spirituality at all. I didn't believe in anything. I thought, I'm sorry, God doesn't let mothers watch their children die right in front of them. It just doesn't happen. And so I would say for a long time I didn't believe in much. And I know a lot of people lean into their faith. I did not. I didn't lean into anything. At my son's funeral, Alvin Brooks came through and said hello to me, and he invited me to his church. And I said, no, I'm not really feeling church, religion. I'm not feeling anything right now. And he said, no, you really need to come. And I said, the last time that I really enjoyed church was when Father Phil Egan was the priest when I went to Nativity. And he stopped and he looked at me and he's like, you're not going to believe this, but Father Phil Egan is the priest at my church. So I felt like that was kind of a sign that maybe I did need to lean a little bit more back into my faith than what I was. And so I started going to St. Monica's every week. And it got better, but I can't say to this day that I'm still 100% in my faith. I struggle a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle a lot.
We all do. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And so is there anything that Father Phil did or helped you get to that, or conversations you had with him?
No, I had a couple of conversations with him. It was more, to be honest, it was more the congregation. That they were so welcoming to me and my family. We would go every Sunday. The music was amazing. I just felt very welcome and happy when I was there.
So it's just, and that helped slowly transform you from a person who was...
I was a non-believer for a long time. And it brought me back to an extent.
Yep. That's very powerful. And we're here today to talk about grace. How does that fit into what you've experienced?
So I feel like just them accepting me into that church, and a lot of people gave me no grace. Like out in public, a lot of people gave me no grace. A lot of people were still very hardened and thought that they knew what they knew. You know, no one really asked me. Sometimes it's uncomfortable when I bring up. I don't bring my son up a lot because a lot of people don't deserve to know that part of me. So I'm very apprehensive about who I tell that story to. And so when I can tell when somebody is non-judgmental and extending grace rather than judgment, because for so many years that's where I was. It was just judgment. And what I learned through that is how to give other people grace, understanding that they're just human too, and that as people, what we tend to do is look at a situation or a tragedy and have our own thought about what they should have done, how they should have handled it. I mean, I've done it before, and I know a lot of people were doing it for me. And so once I learned how to give those people grace, it got a lot easier because I realized that they were just human and they didn't really know any better, and that all I could do was be who I was going to be and prove them wrong.
Yeah, in our conversations, I was really inspired by your assumption of positive intent of others. That was really a very, a very refreshing idea from you, and that lack of judgment on your behalf because of the challenges you've gone through.
Yeah, you won't find me. I have my days where I have an opinion, of course. Do I have days where I'm emotional? I call it passionate, but other people might call it emotional. But I extend so much positivity to other people. I always give the benefit of the doubt. I always find a positive spin. If somebody's telling me a story and we're having a discussion, regardless of who I'm having a discussion with, I can always find the positive about it. I will always say, well, maybe their intention was, I never go down a negative road. And it took me a long time to be like that. But I'm like that now because that's what I would have appreciated when I was going through this. It's just somebody not looking at me like it, first of all, pitiful, and pity.
Sure.
Looking at me like I deserved to have what I had, and to have enough respect to be in conversation with me and respect what I had to say. And that you truly felt heard from people. For sure. Because when people were making judgment, you didn't feel heard. No, and they didn't even know me. It's what their neighbor told them. It's what they saw on Channel 5 or whatever station they were watching. It's what they thank the Lord above that there was not social media. I would not be here today had there been social media, because that is the cruelest thing. And it was back in the day when people still wrote letters. So, I would get letters, but I could throw those letters away. Right. There was no social media. There was no camera phones. There was no, there wasn't anything like that. So it took a lot of stress off of me, but I couldn't have gone through that today. I don't know how people go through tragedy today and come out of it. Yeah, you have to just turn off social media in their perspective. Absolutely. What have you learned about yourself and the healing process that can help all of us when we go through difficult times? So what I have learned about myself is that I am pretty amazing. I don't, because when I look back at what I've seen, what I've gone through, what I've experienced, and to be on this side of it and have the life that I have, like I told you the other day, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my life. Obviously, I would choose differently. I wouldn't have wanted that to happen to my son, but it did. And so I have made the best of my life, the most of it. And I feel like if I can get through that, there's not one single thing that someone can put in front of me that I cannot get through. Maybe it'll be hard, but I can do it. And I know I can do it because I have the tools and I'm a strong enough person and I deserve it. Right. Very good.
Any last thoughts about grace that you would like to leave us with?
I would say just to people to think about when someone is going through something, you don't really know what they're going through. You don't really have any idea. You don't know their day to day. You don't know what they're struggling with inside. All you know is either what you've heard or the perception of what you've seen. And that's not enough to make a judgment, I don't think. And I think that if people in this day and age, especially in this climate, would think more about how other people are feeling and extend more grace rather than sitting back and pointing fingers or blaming or cancel culture or whatever you want to call it, I think that people would be better for it. You'd be better internally, just for yourself, for your own happiness, because you cannot be a happy person if you're constantly pointing at everybody about what they're doing. Because if you have time to talk about what everybody's doing in their life, you really haven't looked deep enough into your own self.
True.
Yeah.
That self-reflection.
Yeah, it's a lot, and nobody likes to look at themselves, and nobody likes to hear about themselves. But when you do, it's freeing. You're just so much better for it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. I know it's been, whenever I pass by that location,
Sure.
I think about the event, and for you to share your story today is incredibly inspiring. I know the challenge you've gone through and the years it took to get to the point where you're at a sense of happiness. And that's kind of the road to grace. So
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.